What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, guys, now that UFC 313 has come to an end and there has been a changing of the guard, the big question is what's next for Alex Pereira? And the obvious answer is a rematch with Ankalaev, but there are definitely some other options on the table. And we also want to discuss, have we seen the Alex Pereira reign as champion come to an end? You know, he's in his late 30s. Is this the end of the Chama era as champion? So, Nick, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Obviously, Dana White doesn't match make on Saturday night,
right?
But this one was about as clear cut as anybody would have hoped for as far as where the next fight's going to be. And he said, look, we're probably going to look at doing Pereira versus Ankalaev 2 next.
Yeah.
So we can shelve that for a second because I don't necessarily know for a fact that that's going to be what ends up happening. Because the one thing, if you look back at Alex's career, what brought him to 205 in the first place? It was getting knocked out by Izzy. Most people think he cleaned out the division and then went up. While he did make a meteoric rise in the division, he actually left middleweight off of a knockout loss.
Right.
So Chael Sonnen has alluded to that a lot because Chael's a big fan of him going to heavyweight, and he said the quickest way for him to get to heavyweight is to lose the belt.
Yeah.
Now, I guess there is some validity to that, but where would he go at heavyweight? Because you have John Jones and Tom Aspinall, and Dana told us last night that the very likely next fight for John is going to be Tom, and they're just working out the logistics of that. So another side of that coin is, after seeing Alex compete against Ankalaev last night, do we really think he's got a feasible chance at beating either one of those guys? I'm leaning heavily towards no. The other thing, and we have to take Alex at his word, is he has said it recently, within the last 3 months, that he does still have aspirations to move back down to 185 and challenge for that belt again.
Yeah.
I think he's too big for it, but Dricus du Plessis is becoming a bigger name.
Yep.
That's a matchup that he may see as more favorable to him than an Ankalaev rematch, so that's on the table as well. So between the three, you know, heavyweight move, and then who would be a potential opponent there, stay at 205 and fight Ankalaev again, which seems to be the more likely outcome, or potentially move back down to 185. What do you think is the most likely thing? And then it also kind of comes to, you come to the realization that there are no easy fights. There's nothing easy for Alex because moving back down has a ton of challenges in and of itself.
Right.
Ankalaev just beat him striking.
Right.
So, you know, how do you negate that? You got to come back and outstrike a guy that just outstruck you. And then obviously the heavyweight move has a ton of challenges for obvious reasons. You're talking about the greatest to ever do it in John Jones and Tom Aspinall, who will probably be the greatest heavyweight to ever do it when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think it's tough any way you want to slice it, but Michael Chandler needs to rent out the saying, I'm not here for a long time, I'm here for a good time, to Alex Pereira. Because if we did see the last time that Chama is a belt holder or fights for a belt, which I think he is for sure going to get the rematch. But if this is the last time we saw him as the champion, he came in for a good time. He did a whole lot, more than almost anybody that's ever entered the sport in just a few short years. And then 4 title defenses in 12 months is basically what it came to a stop last night, but that's what he was doing. Now, everybody that fights in the sport takes bumps and bruises and lives with them year in and year out. To be in championship 5-round fights, scheduled for 5-round fights, means you're training for 5-round fights 4 times in a year against the hardest fighters on the planet. That also is playing a role, I think. I think Alex Pereira may need to take his oars out of the water. Now, it's going to be difficult because, of course, he's going to be a mega underdog, and for good reasons if he goes to heavyweight. I don't really see him jumping in and becoming one of the guys, one of the contenders. I think everybody knows that if Alex Pereira can get the 205 belt again, they won't make him defend it before they let him go try for champ status at heavyweight. But he has to get that belt first, or he's just got to move up and become a contender. So that's why I do think parity is an interesting aspect of this sport, and it only belongs to the ones that are in rare air. The people who don't have to win a fight for their next fight to matter. Conor McGregor's one of those people. Cerrone at the end of his career, he was one of those people. Alex Pereira, he lost, but his stock didn't really go down all that much. I do think his next fight's going to be meaningful. It's going to be for a belt, and if he wins it, then it's like he stubbed his toe one little time, and now he's right back on his path. But I am a little bit hesitant to say that he shouldn't look at parity instead of going for Ankalaev. Ankalaev showed us that he is a superior martial artist to Alex Pereira. So I don't know if you can take 3 months or 4 months or 6 months and devise a game plan that's going to increase your chances of beating Magomed. What you're going to have to do is not beat Magomed by decision. You're going to have to knock him out, and you just realize that's a lot harder to do than it is to game plan for, right? Yep. He's had success knocking everybody out, and a lot of people assumed Magomed would fall just the same as all his other people, but Magomed comes in with such a buttoned-up game plan, and he knows exactly how Pereira feels. He felt the power, and that first round, remember, the reason Magomed was not throwing a whole lot is because he needed to feel for himself just how powerful this guy is. He believed very quickly, okay, these calf kicks are as crazy as DC and other people are talking about. Okay, this hook is just as lethal. I can hear it whistling by me when he throws it. So Magomed made those great changes, and once you've made changes and you fought somebody for 25 straight minutes, you have a real good understanding of how strong they are at the beginning, how much they fade, how much body shots can affect them, how much anything you're doing to them can affect them. You are very much in touch, not only with your own body, but with your opponent's body when you're at this high of a level of mixed martial arts. So I think that if I were him, I would hang out. I would go be a guest at some of these big events. He's been, basically putting all of these events on his shoulders since he got into the UFC and got his belt and all this stuff. I think it'd be good for him to maybe take 6 months off, let Ankalaev defend his belt against somebody, and then bring Poatan back into the mix. Who knows what happens at 185 by then? Perhaps Khamzat wins, and because he's a big star, they want to shoot him up to 205. That could be something that happens. You just have to wait and see what happens. But if I'm Alex Pereira, the number one thing is making sure I got a job to come back to. I think that's pretty safe. Yeah. And then what you have to do is figure out how much your stock has dropped. If it hasn't dropped that much, which I don't believe Alex has dropped too much, he went decision with a very, very difficult fighter to beat, and a lot of people thought he won the fight. But I think if he keeps his oars out of the water and just lets the dust settle, another big fight will present itself for him, and that might be a more advantageous fight for him. It might not be, but either way, take a few months, get yourself out of just nonstop grind competition, go relax a little bit, let your body heal, and then come back with the classic Chama we know and love.
Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind when I think about the question of who Alex should fight next, and then the bigger question of will Alex ever be a champion again?
What's up, guys? We completely forgot to mention this earlier, but as you know, we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and we are getting so close. But most of you are still not subscribed to the channel. What's up with that? Guys, if you're enjoying the content, like a video, comment on something, but most importantly, subscribe. Now let's get back into the show.
The matchmaking is going to be really tough as far as the decisions that Alex makes for himself.
Right.
And what I mean by that is going up to heavyweight, yeah, you could do that. They could pair you with somebody like a Derek Lewis or somebody like that. But I mean, that comes with its challenges as well. But somebody that you seem to have a favorable striking advantage over and try to get you back in the win column and then see what shakes out with John and Tom.
Right.
The other thing, obviously, is the Magomed Ankalaev rematch. But what do they always say? When a champion loses his belt to a younger challenger and there's a rematch, the younger challenger wins again, but only faster and more emphatically this time.
Right.
Magomed is, I think, 31 years old. Alex, I think, is 37 or 38. He's approaching the end of his career.
Yep.
He wasn't in MMA for all that long. He had a long career before MMA in the first place. Magomed Ankalaev is about the perfect age to become a champion for light heavyweight.
For sure.
Here's the problem. If Alex gets the immediate rematch, would likely be in Abu Dhabi in that October card. He'd have his 6 or 8 months to chill.
Right.
He's going to be the underdog going in. He's going into Abu Dhabi to try to fight Magomed Ankalaev. If he could get past him again, that would solidify him as never having to fight Alex a third time.
Right.
And now you have a 31, 32-year-old champion who's dominant. So 205 is probably going to be locked up for a couple of years.
Yep.
And so what do you jump in as a challenger and try to work your way back up and make the case that, yes, I lost twice, but give me a third shot and I can do it.
Max Holloway didn't like that era.
Exactly.
At 45.
And that's kind of where he would become if he lost again.
Right.
185 dropping back down,
Can't happen.
Also very likely that Khamzat Chimaev is going to be the champion at 185.
Right.
And if it's not him, it's going to be Dricus, and Dricus is no slouch either.
And Khamzat's a harder fight than Magomed. Make no mistake about that.
For Alex, I believe it is. I actually truly believe it is.
100%.
I think the odds are less than 25% that Alex ever becomes a champion again.
Crazy to think.
The only road that he has is the immediate rematch with some adjustments, and he's got to knock Magomed out.
Right.
If he can do that, he can get his belt back. And then they'll may make the trilogy. Maybe somebody else is, building a name for themselves.
I don't think they'll make the trilogy.
Yeah,
Magomed's getting screwed if he fights Pereira again and he loses. He's never getting a title shot.
Well,
again.
probably so, because Alex as a champion does big numbers for the UFC. So, I think it's all hinging on Alex getting the rematch and winning it, winning it by knockout, because that's what it's going to take for him to beat Magomed, because Magomed's going to out-volume him and out-pressure him. So we saw that the first fight. And so, I think that for Alex to become a champion again, the path is very narrow, and it goes through a rematch with Magomed Ankalaev that he must win.
100%. And you just said Alex Pereira does a lot for the UFC. That's the truth. And this is the trajectory or the journey that all of these guys who become superstars inevitably go down. Now, people think about the Dagestanis as, they don't promote fights, they aren't the best, sportsmen, or they're great sportsmen, but they're not the best entertainers, right? Well, like Andrew Tate has that old thing. He was like, I knew Conor was going to lose to Khabib because Conor's got businesses and whiskey, and he's got all this stuff going on, and Khabib trains and
goes to the mosque
and goes to the mosque. All that's train Allah. I think that's how he said. And he goes, when you've got so much going on in business obligations and all that kind of stuff, it's taking away from your time on the mats. It's taking away from your time in your head, which is the fight game is very much a mental game. You have second doubts and all sorts of things that you have to battle every day. When you're running a business and being flown around like an international, businessman and a superstar, you're just simply not spending the time on the mats that these Dagestani Russians, these Georgians are spending on the mats, and that's why they're catching up. Alex Pereira, not only has he been the most active fighter on the UFC's roster, the most active champion, which is insane, so it's all 5 rounds, but he's also doing more media obligation than anybody else on the card. That entire card, all the promo and stuff, barely had Magomed in it. It was all Alex Pereira. Yeah. This was the Alex show, and they put a lot of pressure on Alex, and they've made him fly all over the world, and I think he enjoys that. But you have to remember, he's a human. He has his limitations, and if you've got some hungry freak who never loses fights unless it's a heel hook in the early parts of his UFC career, you better be training every day, twice a day like he is, because that dude has no distractions. And even when he becomes a champion, he doesn't want your work schedule of media obligations. He wants to go right back to that gym. So it's the mindset. And look, I love that Alex Pereira is good for the sport. I think these types of champions are the ones that we need to elevate the sport, grow the sport into bigger, broader horizons. And one day, people like Alex Pereira will make the UFC and mixed martial arts the biggest sport in the world, I do believe. But until that day comes, you got to realize that there's always those hungry dudes that didn't make the money you made in your last fight, that didn't get the opportunities you had, and all they want to do is steal every last thing that you have from them. And Magomed did exactly that. So I think my biggest takeaway, I don't care if it's 205, 185, or heavyweight, Chama needs to take 6 months. I'd love to see him in the winter months. That's probably what I would do if I were him. Just take your oars out of the water, let the dust settle, see what happens. And I believe it'll be a rematch. But I think Magomed Ankalaev, after that fight, after he rests for the rest of Ramadan, will probably fight one more time before then.